Have you ever felt an inexplicable heaviness in your home, as if invisible burdens were weighing down on your spirit despite your best efforts to create a peaceful sanctuary? Many believers experience this spiritual struggle daily, unaware that one of the most powerful spiritual shields has been sitting in our churches, freely available yet tragically underutilized in most Christian homes. Padre Pio, one of the most mystically gifted saints of recent times, frequently spoke about this simple yet profound spiritual tool that transformed countless lives during his ministry. His wisdom on this subject wasn't theoretical. It came from decades of intense spiritual warfare and divine revelations that allowed him to see beyond our physical reality into the spiritual battles that affect our everyday lives. The sacred wisdom I'm about to share with you isn't new. It's ancient, tested, and proven through centuries of spiritual practice, yet somehow overlooked in our modern rush for complex solutions to life's problems. Padre Pio would often tell his spiritual children that the simplest spiritual remedies are often the most powerful, particularly when applied with genuine faith and consistency. This teaching about holy water was something he insisted upon with unusual firmness, sometimes even checking his visitors' homes to ensure they were following this crucial spiritual practice. "The enemy fears few things more than this blessed substance," he would say, with the conviction of someone who had witnessed its effects in the spiritual realm with his own mystical vision. The stigmatic saint understood that what appears simple to human eyes often carries immense power in the spiritual world. Before revealing the 7 transformative changes that holy water brings to your home, I must emphasize something crucial about Padre Pio's teaching on this sacramental. Unlike those who treat holy water as a superstitious charm or magic potion, Padre Pio taught that its power lies in the faithful connection it creates between our physical world and God's grace. The holy water itself is not magical. It's a channel, a conduit, a physical means through which divine protection and blessing flow into our lives and homes. This distinction is vital to understand because approaching holy water with the wrong mindset can diminish its spiritual effectiveness. As Padre Pio explained to a troubled family experiencing strange disturbances in their home, it is not the water itself that will protect you, but the faith with which you use this blessed gift from God. Let this profound understanding guide your approach to what you're about to learn. You've likely experienced that moment when you walk into a room and sense something is off, an unexplained heaviness, tension, or unrest that affects everyone inside. Padre Pio explained that our homes, like sponges, absorb the spiritual energies, emotions, and even the spiritual battles that occur within their walls. Every argument, every moment of despair, every interaction with people carrying negative spiritual influences leaves an imprint that accumulates over time. This invisible buildup is what many sense but cannot identify, affecting sleep, relationships, and even physical health without any apparent cause. Holy water, according to Padre Pio's teachings, acts as a spiritual cleanser, dissolving these accumulated spiritual residues that no physical cleaning can touch. The first transformation begins here, in the spiritual atmosphere of your home that affects everything else. Padre Pio's understanding of spiritual cleansing went deeper than most realize. During exorcisms, which he performed with remarkable efficacy, he noted how holy water created boundaries that confined malevolent influences, preventing their spread and weakening their hold. He applied this same principle to everyday Christian homes, recognizing that while most aren't experiencing extreme cases of spiritual attack, many suffer from what he called spiritual dust, minor but persistent negative influences that gradually dim our spiritual light. Just as you would not allow physical filth to accumulate in your living space, he would counsel, do not allow spiritual impurities to gather where you and your loved ones rest, pray, and live. This teaching highlights the importance of regular spiritual cleansing, not just as a reaction to problems, but as preventative spiritual maintenance. The first transformation holy water brings is this deep spiritual cleansing that works on a level no material cleaning can reach. What makes this spiritual cleansing so remarkable is its comprehensive nature. Padre Pio explained that when holy water is used with faith, It doesn't merely address symptoms of spiritual disturbance, it works at the root level. Unlike temporary solutions that mask spiritual problems, holy water initiates a process of genuine purification that makes the environment inhospitable to negative influences. One of Padre Pio's spiritual children recounted how, after struggling for years with inexplicable nightmares that no therapy or medication could resolve, a simple practice of blessing her bedroom with holy water each night transformed her sleep within a week. "It wasn't that the holy water sedated me," she explained, "but rather that something that had been disturbing my rest was no longer able to remain in that blessed space." This purifying effect extends to the entire home atmosphere, creating what Padre Pio called a sanctuary of peace, where divine grace can flow more freely, affecting everyone who dwells there. The second profound change that occurs when you introduce holy water into your home is the establishment of a spiritual shield that Padre Pio described as a barrier against which many spiritual attacks shatter before they can reach you. In his extensive experience with spiritual warfare, Padre Pio witnessed how holy water created boundaries in the spiritual realm that many negative forces could not cross. He explained that while our physical eyes see only water, in the spiritual dimension, this blessed substance radiates divine light that repels forces of darkness. This protective function doesn't eliminate all life's challenges. Padre Pio was clear that God allows certain trials for our spiritual growth, but it specifically targets unwarranted spiritual attacks that aren't part of God's purifying plan for us. The protection isn't just defensive. It actually strengthens the spiritual foundations of your home, making it increasingly resilient against future intrusions. This protection extends to all members of the household in ways that might surprise you. Padre Pio recounted how children in homes where holy water was used regularly often showed greater resilience against negative peer pressure and seemed more naturally inclined toward virtuous choices. He explained that holy water creates what he called a spiritual microclimate that subtly influences everyone who spends time within it. The human spirit is more sensitive than most realize, he would say, absorbing influences from its surroundings, just as surely as the body absorbs nutrition from food. In environments protected by holy water, he observed that people naturally gravitated toward more positive thoughts, felt more inspired in their prayer life, and experienced greater clarity in moral decisions. This protective influence works quietly in the background of family life, often unnoticed but profoundly effective in guarding the spiritual well-being of all who dwell within those blessed walls. Padre Pio's teaching on spiritual protection through holy water includes a particularly important aspect for our troubled times. He explained that homes blessed with holy water become spiritual lighthouses that extend their protective influence beyond their physical boundaries. A home where holy water is used with faith, he taught, becomes a point of spiritual resistance that affects not just those who live there but radiates outward to neighbors and visitors. In an age where spiritual confusion and darkness seem to be intensifying, this protective radius becomes increasingly valuable. If you believe this teaching of Padre Pio can transform your home into such a sanctuary of protection, type in the comments, "I'm ready for this blessing." Remember to subscribe to our channel for more life-changing spiritual wisdom that most people never discover. The protection that begins in your home can extend to touch countless lives around you, creating ripples of divine grace in an increasingly troubled world. Have you ever considered that your home might be frequented by celestial visitors, whose presence goes undetected by human senses? Padre Pio, with his mystical gift of seeing beyond the physical realm, often spoke of how angels respond to the presence of blessed objects in our homes, particularly holy water. The third transformation that occurs when you incorporate holy water into your living space is what Padre Pio described as an open invitation to angelic presence. In his private conversations with spiritual directees, he revealed that angels are particularly drawn to environments sanctified by holy water, as it creates a spiritual atmosphere more compatible with their celestial nature. This isn't mere poetic imagery. Padre Pio could literally see how the angelic presence intensified in spaces where holy water was regularly used with faith. Angels prefer to linger where they are welcomed, he would explain, and few things signal that welcome more clearly than the regular use of blessed sacramentals. The practical implications of this angelic invitation are far-reaching for your daily life. Padre Pio taught that angels don't merely observe us passively, but actively participate in creating an environment conducive to spiritual growth and divine protection. He recounted numerous instances where individuals experienced sudden inspirations, warnings about hidden dangers, or unexpected comfort during times of distress, all attributed to angelic intervention that was facilitated by the presence of holy water in their homes. One particularly moving account involved a mother who had established the practice of blessing her children with holy water before they left for school each morning. During a particularly harrowing incident where her son narrowly escaped a serious accident, the boy later described feeling as if someone physically pulled me back just before a car sped through a red light. Padre Pio, upon hearing this account, simply nodded and said, "The angels respond to our invitations." This angelic presence brings with it a unique spiritual atmosphere that visitors often sense without understanding its source. Many of Padre Pio's followers reported that guests in their homes would comment on the unusual sense of peace they experienced upon entering, a tranquility that seemed to exceed the normal comfort of a well-kept home. Padre Pio explained that what these visitors were experiencing was the fringe of angelic presence, a spiritual reality their souls could detect even when their physical senses could not. The angels bring with them something of heaven's atmosphere, he taught, and this heavenly climate affects everyone who enters it, believers and non-believers alike. This transformation of your home into an angelic way station creates subtle but profound effects on all who dwell there or visit, influencing thoughts, emotions, and even physical well-being in ways that science cannot measure, but that spirits can distinctly feel. The fourth remarkable change that holy water brings to your home addresses something many believers struggle with in our distracted, noise-filled world: spiritual sensitivity. Padre Pio observed that regular exposure to blessed elements, particularly holy water, gradually refines our spiritual senses in ways similar to how regular exercise strengthens physical muscles. The soul has senses just as the body does, he would explain to his spiritual children. But most people allow these spiritual senses to atrophy through neglect. The presence of holy water in your home creates what he called a training ground for these dormant spiritual faculties. Families who maintained the practice reported becoming more attuned to subtle spiritual realities, developing stronger discernment about people and situations, experiencing more meaningful prayer, and recognizing God's gentle guidance more readily in daily decisions. This heightened spiritual sensitivity doesn't happen overnight, but develops gradually as the home environment becomes increasingly sanctified. This development of spiritual sensitivity extends beyond just religious perception to affect how we process all of life's experiences. Padre Pio noticed that individuals living in homes where holy water was regularly used demonstrated greater emotional resilience during times of crisis. Their spiritual eyes are more open, he explained, allowing them to see beyond immediate difficulties to the greater divine purpose at work. This expanded spiritual vision doesn't eliminate suffering, but transforms how it's experienced and interpreted. One businessman under Padre Pio's spiritual direction recounted how, after establishing the practice of blessing his home and office with holy water, he found himself responding to business setbacks with unexpected calm and clarity. It wasn't that the problems disappeared, he explained, but rather that I could suddenly see them within a larger context that drained them of their power to disturb my peace. This transformation of perspective represents one of the most profound benefits of the heightened spiritual sensitivity that holy water cultivates. Perhaps most remarkably, this increased spiritual sensitivity eventually extends beyond the individual to affect the entire family system. Padre Pio observed that in homes where holy water was used consistently over time, family members became more attuned not only to spiritual realities, but also to each other's needs and emotions. Communication improved, empathy deepened, and the family unit began functioning with greater harmony and understanding. When asked to explain this phenomenon, Padre Pio offered a profound insight. Holy water doesn't just connect us more deeply to God, it connects us more authentically to each other because it gradually dissolves the spiritual static that interferes with genuine human connection. In an age where families often live under the same roof but remain emotionally disconnected, this restoration of spiritual sensitivity offers healing for the most fundamental human relationships. The holy water doesn't create artificial harmony, but rather removes the spiritual obstacles that prevent the natural love within families from flowing freely as God intended. You might be surprised to learn that Padre Pio's teaching on holy water extended beyond purely spiritual benefits to include effects on physical health, a connection modern minds often struggle to comprehend. With his unique mystical insight, Padre Pio could perceive how spiritual realities directly influenced physical conditions in ways medical science cannot detect. The body and soul are not separate compartments, he would explain, but an integrated whole where each affects the other constantly. Holy water, used with faith, initiates what he called a harmonizing process that begins in the spiritual realm but gradually manifests in physical well-being. This doesn't mean holy water replaces medicine. Padre Pio himself sent many people to doctors, but rather that it addresses spiritual roots of distress that can manifest as physical symptoms. Numerous followers reported improvements in sleep quality, reduced anxiety symptoms, and even alleviation of minor physical ailments after incorporating holy water into their daily lives. The connection between spiritual cleansing and physical health became particularly evident in cases Padre Pio encountered involving what modern psychology might call psychosomatic conditions, physical symptoms triggered or intensified by emotional and spiritual distress. In one notable case, a woman suffering from chronic, medically unexplainable pain found substantial relief after following Padre Pio's counsel to bless her home daily with holy water, paying special attention to her bedroom. When she expressed surprise at the improvement, Padre Pio explained, "Your physical pain was being amplified by spiritual disturbances in your environment that have now been addressed." He clarified that while the holy water didn't directly treat medical conditions, it created an environment more conducive to the body's natural healing processes by removing spiritual obstacles that were exacerbating her suffering. This understanding challenges our modern compartmentalized view of health and suggests a more integrated approach that acknowledges the connection between spiritual and physical well-being. The fifth transformation that holy water brings to your home involves this mysterious but powerful connection between spiritual order and physical vitality. Padre Pio observed that homes where holy water was used consistently seemed to support physical health in subtle but significant ways. Family members experienced better recovery from illnesses, showed greater resilience against common infections, and maintained more stable energy levels. He attributed these effects to what he called the harmonizing grace that flows through blessed objects when they're used with authentic faith. When the spirit receives what it needs, he taught, the body benefits indirectly, but unmistakably. This doesn't mean holy water makes people immortal or prevents all illness. Padre Pio himself suffered physically throughout his life, but it does suggest that spiritual care, including the use of sacramentals like holy water, should be considered an important component of a truly holistic approach to health. The body and soul are God's creation, designed to function in harmony, and holy water helps restore some measure of that original harmony disrupted by sin. In our comfortable modern world, the concept of spiritual warfare often seems distant or metaphorical, but Padre Pio, who bore the visible wounds of Christ and battled demonic forces throughout his life, spoke of it as an absolute reality that affects every believer. The sixth transformation that holy water brings to your home is what he described as spiritual warfare readiness, a state of preparedness that most Christians lack in our spiritually vulnerable times. Many believers, he would lament, are like soldiers going into battle without armor or weapons, completely unprepared for the spiritual conflicts they will inevitably face. Holy water, when properly understood and faithfully used, functions as both defensive and offensive equipment in these unseen battles. It creates what Padre Pio called outposts of divine protection in your home, specific points where spiritual resistance is strongest and from which grace can flow to weaker areas. This strategic spiritual mapping of your living space was something Padre Pio taught his spiritual children with remarkable specificity. The practical application of this spiritual warfare readiness involves understanding that certain areas of your home may be more vulnerable to spiritual attack than others. Padre Pio would often guide families to pay special attention to thresholds, doors, windows, and other entry points, as well as places where important decisions are made or where children sleep. The enemy is strategic, he would explain, targeting the places of greatest vulnerability or greatest potential. By regularly applying holy water to these key locations, you establish what he called spiritual sentries, points of heightened divine protection that stand guard even when you're not consciously aware of spiritual dangers. One family under Padre Pio's guidance reported that after establishing this practice, their teenage son, who had been gradually drifting into concerning behaviors and friendships, suddenly began making better choices and returned to his former virtuous character. When they mentioned this change to Padre Pio, he simply nodded and said, "The sentries are doing their work." This spiritual warfare readiness extends beyond passive defense to active engagement with the spiritual battles that inevitably touch our lives and families. Padre Pio taught that homes where holy water is used regularly become what he called centers of spiritual resistance, places where the larger cosmic battle between good and evil shifts slightly but significantly toward the good. This doesn't mean such homes never experience problems or spiritual attacks, but rather that they face these challenges from a position of spiritual strength rather than vulnerability. A home protected by faith and holy water, he explained, doesn't escape the attention of the enemy. It may even attract more attention precisely because of its spiritual significance, but it faces these attacks with divine resources that make victory much more likely. In essence, the sixth transformation prepares your home not just to endure spiritual battles, but to participate effectively in them, contributing in a small but real way to the ultimate triumph of good over evil that Christian faith promises. The seventh and perhaps most profound transformation that holy water brings to your home addresses the very foundation of Christian life, faith itself. Padre Pio observed that the regular intentional use of holy water gradually deepens and matures faith in ways that theoretical knowledge alone cannot accomplish. Faith is not merely intellectual assent to doctrine, he would explain, but a living relationship with divine realities that must be nurtured through tangible practices. Holy water serves as what he called a faith bridge, a physical means of connecting with spiritual truths that might otherwise remain abstract and distant. When you bless yourself or your home with holy water, you engage in a concrete act of faith that acknowledges the reality of divine grace working in your physical world. Over time, this repeated affirmation of faith's practical relevance gradually transforms abstract belief into lived experience. Families under Padre Pio's spiritual guidance often reported that this simple practice eventually revolutionized their entire approach to faith, moving it from a compartmentalized Sunday activity to an integrated lifestyle. This deepening of faith manifests in practical ways that extend far beyond religious sentimentality. Padre Pio noted that individuals who maintained the holy water practice consistently demonstrated greater trust in divine providence during life's inevitable challenges. They have trained their spiritual reflexes, he explained, to turn immediately to God, rather than succumbing to fear or despair when difficulties arise. This spiritual reflex develops through the daily micro-decisions to acknowledge God's presence and power through the use of holy water. One business executive who consulted Padre Pio during a financial crisis recounted how this practice transformed his response to professional setbacks. Before establishing this habit, my first reaction to problems was panic and frantic self-reliance. Now, I find myself instinctively turning to prayer and trusting God's guidance, not as a last resort, but as my first response. This shift represents a profound maturation of faith from theoretical belief to practical trust that changes how we navigate life's uncertainties. Perhaps most significantly, this seventh transformation creates what Padre Pio called a faith ecosystem within your home, an environment where belief is reinforced and nurtured through multiple channels. The visible presence of holy water fonts, The regular ritual of blessing spaces and people, and the accumulated experiences of grace responding to these practices all work together to create a home atmosphere where faith feels natural rather than forced. Children raised in such environments often develop a particularly robust and resilient faith that withstands the challenges of secular culture more effectively than faith transmitted only through words and concepts. In homes where holy water is used faithfully, Padre Pio observed, children don't just hear about God's presence, they experience it as a normal part of daily life. This experiential dimension of faith, cultivated through simple practices like the use of holy water, creates spiritual roots that run deep enough to sustain belief through life's inevitable storms and spiritual droughts. The seventh transformation thus addresses not just present spiritual needs, but extends its influence to future generations. You stand now at a threshold of opportunity, a chance to implement this profound spiritual wisdom from Padre Pio that has transformed countless homes and families throughout the decades. The power of holy water to create these 7 transformations in your home isn't dependent on complex formulas or rare spiritual gifts, but simply on faithful, consistent practice, grounded in genuine belief. Padre Pio himself emphasized that the effectiveness of holy water isn't magical but sacramental. It depends not on the quantity used or elaborate rituals performed, but on the faith with which it's applied. A single drop used with deep faith, he would say, accomplishes more than gallons used superstitiously. This accessibility is part of God's generous design, making profound spiritual tools available not just to the specially gifted or highly educated, but to every sincere believer willing to accept and use them. The transformations we've explored aren't theoretical possibilities, but proven realities that have manifested in thousands of homes where this teaching has been applied with sincere hearts. The implementation of this practice requires neither complex preparation nor specialized knowledge, but it does demand consistency and intentionality. Padre Pio provided practical guidance for those beginning this spiritual discipline, advising them to start by blessing the main entryways of their home daily, then gradually extending the practice to other key areas, especially bedrooms, where we are often most vulnerable during sleep. He recommended keeping small holy water containers in multiple locations to overcome the obstacle of inconvenience, which he recognized as one of the enemy's subtle tactics for disrupting beneficial spiritual habits. Make the practice as easy as possible, he counseled, removing every barrier that might prevent consistency. For families, he especially encouraged parents to bless their children with holy water before they leave home each day and before bedtime, creating protected bookends to each day. These simple rituals take only moments, but establish patterns of grace that accumulate powerful effects over time. Tonight, not tomorrow, or some undefined future date when circumstances seem perfect, is when your home's transformation can begin. Padre Pio emphasized the importance of immediate action when spiritual wisdom is received. Grace offered, but not accepted, he warned, becomes harder to recognize when offered again. If you've followed this teaching to its conclusion and recognize its potential to transform your home into a sanctuary of divine protection and blessing, don't allow procrastination to rob you of these benefits. Obtain holy water from your local church today if possible, or schedule a specific time to do so within the next 24 hours. Begin with the simple blessing of your home's entryways, offering a brief prayer of invitation for God's presence and protection as you do so. Even before you can observe its effects, this act of faith itself begins the transformation process in both your home and your heart. The 7 changes we've explored unfold gradually but inevitably when holy water is used with consistent faith. The spiritual cleansing, divine protection, angelic invitation, spiritual sensitivity, physical well-being, spiritual warfare readiness, and deepened faith that Padre Pio promised to those who follow this teaching. Your transformation begins tonight.